Hi loves, welcome back again to Eco Designs to Fit. In this tutorial, you'll be learning how to sew a Victorian inbuilt corset. It is very simple, and in my last tutorial, I shared with you guys how to cut out the pattern. Now, here is the lace I'm going to be using for this tutorial. Here I have 5 yards of lace. Here I have a Mikado silk, and I'll be using it for the upper part of my Victorian corset. Here is the bridal satin, which I'm going to be using for the underlay of the skirt. Okay, and here is my ridgeline boning. So guys, I've gone ahead to cut out my pattern on the fashion fabric. So here are all the patterns, and I've added the necessary allowances. So please do follow my hands so you understand where I added allowances. Okay, so for these corsets, I didn't add extra allowance to the side because when I was drafting it, I already added sewing allowance. Okay, now guys, I've also gone ahead to cut out my yoke with the yoke pattern. And to cut out my yoke, I made sure that I doubled it, okay, because I love to double my yoke so that it will be more firm on the body and it won't tear down fast. Now, this is my back pattern. This is where the yoke is going to start from. I've notched it. I'm going to remove the pattern for the back yoke. Now, the back yoke came with a keyhole. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the pattern so that you can see exactly how I added my allowances. So I added allowance around the keyhole, now to the down part, and then to where I'm going to have my button. Now this Victorian corset came with a zipper, and it also came with loop on the inside, making it inbuilt corset. Okay, and I've gone ahead to add up my sewing allowance. You can see that. Now here is the actual fashion fabric. I've gone ahead to add up my underlay, which I made use of the bridal satin to do so. Now guys, I'm going to go ahead and place it right side facing each other, and then join the center back to the side back. Okay, now these are my front fashion fabric. So remember, like I said, I made use of the Mikado silk fabric to cut out the front pattern on fabric. So these are how you're going to place it. Now I've gone ahead to remove the side piece. Remember that the front is divided into 3 parts. Okay, the number 1 is the center front, the number 2 is the middle front, and the 3 is the side front. So I've gone ahead to remove the side front, and I'm going to pad up my center front and the middle front. Okay, so I'm going to ensure that my padding is not going to exceed the under bust point. So I've gone ahead to bring in my wadding. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out, as you can see, and then move over to my sewing machine to join my pieces together. Remember, when you're cutting on fabric, you have to cut on folds, so all of them should come in 2 pieces. Okay, so guys, I am on my sewing machine right now, and I'm joining the 2 center fronts. Now after joining the 2 center fronts, I'll go ahead and bring in one part of the middle part, and I will join it to wherever it matches. Okay, so you can see the way I'm joining this. I'm going to start from the down parts, and once I get to the underbust point, I'm going to tilt my hand and then continue to join this. Okay, now if I join and get to the center, I'm going to stop joining this and then move over and start from the upper part to complete the joining. You can see what I am doing right there. So guys, I am done with this one. I'm going to go ahead and bring the other side. Okay, so guys, I'm going to now bring in the other side, and then I would start from the down part to also join this. Now you guys, if you notice, a Victorian corset is just like a bustier. Now if you know how to cut out your bustier perfectly well, you can actually do this. It is very simple, and to join it is also like you're joining a bustier. You can see the only difference here is that a Victorian corset has multiple darts to it. Okay, And also a Victorian corset gives this snatching look that makes the waistline smaller because of the multiple darts and also because of the boning that have been added to it. Okay, so guys, I am done joining the center front and the middle front. Now I'm going to go ahead and notch the seam allowances. Please do not forget to notch your seam allowances so that by the time you iron your seams, they're going to lay flat. And you guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera because I feel like you guys are not seeing what I'm doing clearly. So here is my side front. We are going to go ahead and join it. Now, you can see that whatever it is I'm joining here, I'm using half an inch. Okay, you guys, if you have watched this tutorial to this extent, please make sure you share it. You can see what I've been telling you. You are going to learn a lot of sewing technique from this particular tutorial. That's why it seems like it is too long. Please do not skip it. And if you find this tutorial helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe if you haven't done yet. Okay, so guys, you can see I am done joining the actual fabric of the front piece. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing to the lining piece. Now remember, it is being cut on fold like I said. So here is the center piece, the two center piece. So I'm gonna head to join the seam allowances and then open it up. Now I'm going to bring in the middle front as well. Now the middle front also come in two pieces. So I'll join one to the left side of the center front and then join one to the right side of the center front. So guys, I am done stitching the lining and this is what it looks like. I already have the actual fabric part on the table. This is the inside and this is what the inside of the lining looks like. You can see the multiple dots. Now we are going to move over to the back and you have to pay good attention to this back. Okay, so this is my actual fabric for the back. Now I have the side back and the center back on the table. I'm going to place it right side facing each other and I'm going to join using the half an inch seam allowance that I left there. Now I'm equally going to repeat the same thing for the lining parts, but then you guys, you have to pay good attention to this. Now before we stitch up the lining, we are going to have to input the lacing bar. Okay, so we are going to have to sandwich the lacing bar in between the center back and the side back of this lining. Now to cut out our lacing bar, what we are going to do is to use the center back to do that. Now minus the zipper allowance, I'm going to come down by 1 inch from the upper part and go up by 1 inch from the down parts. I've gone ahead to cut it out behind the camera and this is what I am showing you guys right now. Okay, so I have the that part, I have the upper part, the down part, and the place I'm going to insert the loops as you can see on the pattern. Now I'm going to bring in my Mikado silk and the bridal satin because I want to have the lining part and the actual part for this lacing bar. Okay, now to cut it out, I'm going to have to cut out 2 for the lining and 2 for the actual piece. Now I'm using the bridal satin for the lining piece and then I'm using the Mikado silk for the actual piece. This is what I want. You can actually use any of these for whatever it is that you want to use it for. Okay, after all, they are almost like the same. So what I'm going to do is fold my fabric into 2. The 2 of them I folded into 2 and then I'm going to place in my pattern and I'll be adding up half an inch all around it. So that is what you can see me trying to cut out. I placed this on fold before cutting out, so I'm going to slash the folded parts and then equally cut it out so that we have half an inch right there. Now after cutting this is what we have. Now I forgot to say this initially. Before cutting out this lacing bar, I went ahead to iron in fusible interface to it. Now, if you notice, some parts do not have fusible interface. I'm still going to replace it. So please do not ask me why some parts do not have fusible interface. Now, on the part which I'm going to be having my lacing bar, I am going to be having an eyelet right there. And to make these eyelets firm and protected, I'm going to be adding ridgeline bone to it. Okay, so I'm trying to mark out lines which I'm going to be inserting this lacing bar right now. Okay, so what I did was, from the edge I marked out half an inch. From this half an inch I marked in 1 inch, and from this 1 inch I also marked in 1 inch again. So I have 3 lines right there. So now these are where I'm going to be sewing in my ridgeline boning, as you can see. So here is my ridgeline boning, and now I'm going to have to leave half an inch on both the upper part and the lower part. Okay, because you are going to have to sew half an inch all around to turn this. Now this how I'm going to be sewing this into this. Okay, so I'll be able to have a space where I'll be inserting my eyelets, and this will help protect the eyelets so that by the time you drag it with the rope, it's not going to pull off. Now remember, we are going to be needing 4 ridgeline boning. So guys, I'm now going to show you how I'll be sewing this into the fabric. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move over to my sewing machine and I will sew just like this. Now the ridgeline boning has this smooth surface, and that is where you're going to be sewing this. Now you're not going to be sewing with the actual fabric on top of it. Anyways, you're going to see how I'll be doing this on top the machine. So I'm on top the machine, and here are my ridgeline boning. First, I'm going to tape the edge of the ridgeline boning. If you don't have a masking tape to tape it down, you can actually make use of your lighter to burn it so that it won't poke out of the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to tape all the hole mouths and then we start to sew. I am done protecting the edges. Now it is time for us to sew. Now my first stitch with the boning should be on the half an inch line, as you can see. And remember, you are going to have to sew on the 2 smooth parts on the ridge line boning. So the first stitch should be on that half an inch line, and then the other stitch should be by the corner. I hope you guys understand. Now after this, go ahead and bring in the second ridgeline boning, and you can see I placed it on the last line so that I'll be having a space in between the 2 ridgeline boning, as you can see. So this space is where I'm going to be inserting my eyelets. I hope you guys understand. Now after sewing this, it is now time for us to place it on top the actual piece. Okay, just like this, and then you're going to now sew around using half an inch. I'm going to sew all around it using half an inch, but then I'm going to leave just the part which is going to enter into the dart of the lining. Okay, so you can see that particular part, I didn't make any stitches on it, and that is where I'm going to be turning this from. I also went ahead to notch so that I'll be able to turn this properly. Okay, now after turning this, I'm equally going to match up the top following the boning channels, and after that, you guys, this is what I have. Now I've gone ahead to insert my eyelets. I have a detailed tutorial on how to do this, so that's why I didn't bother myself showing you how to do that. So I've gone ahead to put in my eyelets in between those 2 bonings. So this will help your loops to stay intact in as much as anyhow you drag it. I hope you guys understand. Now it is time to stitch up the lining with the lacing bar. So here is my center back and the side back. So I'm going to place in my lacing bar just like this. Okay, so from the upper parts go down by 1.5 inches, and from the down parts also do the same thing. So I'll repeat the same thing to the other side, and then mark from the upper part 1.5 inches, from the lower part 1.5 inches. I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and stitch this using half an inch. So guys, here is what we have. You can see how beautiful this is looking, and you can see how the lacing bar was sandwiched into the lining. Okay, so this is what yours should look like when you are done with this. So guys, it's time for us to bring in the actual piece of the back. You can see I've equally gone ahead to join them together. Now from here, we are going to sew in our ridgeline boning into the lining. Okay, so this is the lining of the front part of my corsets, and I'm going to be sewing in this ridgeline boning into all these dart lines. You can actually create other style lines, but for me, I'm going to be using this dart line as my boning channel style lines. Okay, so here is how I'll be sewing this in. Please do not sew this facing the other way around, or you can also go and give this a press so that it stays flat, which is what I'm going to be doing. Now you guys, before you sew in your boning channels, please do make sure you come down from the upper part by 1 inch, and then from the down part I'm going to be going up by 1.5 inches. Okay, so I'll go ahead and mark it all around, and also around the upper parts 1 inch. So guys, around the side seam I did initially 1 inch as the other upper parts, but then I decided to go down by 1.5 inches. This is because I don't want my boning to affect the sewing of my sleeve. Okay, so I've gone ahead to cut out my ridgeline bonings. I'm going to move over to my sewing machine so that we can stitch this together. Now, if you notice, my boning is a bit straight now. Okay, what I did was to use my steam iron to press it down a little. Now, if you're trying to press it, endeavor to use something on top, like a fabric on top. So what I use is a lining so that it will not melt, because this can actually melt. Okay, so before I sew, I will also input my masking tape to protect the edges, not to poke on your client or poke out of the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to keep stitching. I will ensure that the middle of the ridgeline boning is on the middle of the darts. Okay, so I'll keep sewing until I finish this up. Now, after doing that for the fronts, I will equally repeat the same thing for the back. So you can see where I'm adding up my ridgeline boning for the back. Okay, I'm going to have to push the lacing bar by the side, and then I'm going to stitch in this ridgeline boning so you can see what it looks like. Now guys, if you notice, the first place I sewed in my ridgeline boning for this part of the lining is the place I have my lacing bar. You can see. So now I'm going to insert extra one to the back. Okay, because the more this boning channel, the more snatched or fitted your corset is going to look. So I did that 5 inches away from the first one. Now after that, this is what we have, you guys. Now guys, after I was done, this is what I have for both the front and the back. This is the inside. You can see I also went ahead to input few style lines in the middle of the front. Now we are going to move over to sew the yoke. Okay, so we are going to be turning the necklines of our yoke. Now what I'm going to do is stitch the neckline using half an inch. After that, I'm going to trim up the allowance, turn it over to the good side, and then top stitch on the neckline and the armhole. I'm going to move over to the back, stitch the neckline with half an inch, cut off the allowance, stitch the keyhole with half an inch, cut off the allowance, and then stitch this part which is going to have button and also button holder. I'm equally going to cut out button holder, fold it and stitch into this. Okay, so after that, this is what we have. You can see this is what the back looks like, and also this is what the front looks like. Okay, now I'm going to bring in the front of this my corset bodice, and then I'm going to equally bring in my yoke, which is the front yoke. Now I'm going to match up the middle of my yoke and then the middle of my blouse. Use my pins to hold it in place. Now guys, you have to make use of your pins. It is very important. Now after pinning up one side, I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other side. But if I want to sew this, I'm going to remove the pin for one side, start from one side to stitch using 1/4 of an inch, and after that I'm going to go ahead and bring in the lining. Okay, now to this lining, match up the middle of the lining with the middle of the actual piece, making sure that the yoke is being sandwiched in between these two. And after that, go ahead and notch the allowance and equally top stitch. After you are done with the fronts, move to the back. Okay, so this is my back yoke. I'm going to make sure that I place my back yoke the right place it's supposed to be, because I notched it. If you notice, you will see a notch right there. So if you are drafting out your pattern, ensure that you notch where the yoke is going to be sewed into. Okay, now after stitching the yoke with 1/4 of an inch, I'll go ahead and bring in the lining and equally sew it, and then notch the allowance and top stitch, turn the side seam, and you guys, this is it. This is what we have. I've equally hold the zipper allowance. Okay, so this is what the back looks like, and I've showed you the front. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the front, and then making sure that right sides are facing each other, I'll go and stitch up the seam allowance and also stitch up the shoulder. And you guys, this is what we have. You can see that we are almost done with this. Now this is what the back looks like. Remember, I've held in my zipper allowance for the back. Now I'm going to measure my true waistline. Okay, so remember, from my shoulder to the under bust is 16 inches. Now from my shoulder to the waistline is 20 inches. I'm going to place a mark right there. I'll repeat the same thing to the other side just to be sure. I'll place, so my true waistline is 20. Now I'm going to turn over to the back, and then from shoulder to my back length is 18 inches. I'm going to mark. Okay, so now this is going to serve as a guide as to when I'm going to match up the down part, which is the skirt, into this upper part. Okay, so guys, we're going to go ahead and pipe the down part of the blouse. I'm going to make use of this strip of fabric. It is very long enough to go around the down part of my blouse, and the height is 1.5 inches. So here is the inside of my inbuilt corset. You can see what it looks like. I'm now going to go ahead and pipe it. So to pipe, I'm going to open up my seam allowance, okay, the side seam allowance, so that I can pipe. And after piping, I'm going to close up my seam allowance because I don't want to turn it around, so that if my client come, it might not be her size and I'll start losing. So it's better to loosen up the side seam and pipe and then close it up so that you can easily shape it. I hope you guys understand. I've also gone ahead to sew in my zipper, and this is what I have. Now next thing I want to do is go ahead and bring in the skirt part so that I will show you guys what next to do. Okay, now here is my skirt. You can see my skirt is being joined separately. Okay, so I joined the actual part of this skirt separately and then the lining part separately. Now the lining is very short, you don't want it to be too long, but if you want it that long, go ahead and it is your preference. Okay, now I'm going to loosen up the zipper allowance so that I can fix in my zip first. So I'm going to go fix in my zip, and after that, here it is. So let me zip it up so you can see. So the first thing you're going to do is you have to input your zipper, because we are going to be sewing an inseam finishing on this skirt. That is if you want. Okay, so this is my preference and that's why I'm using that. Now after that, I'm going to cut out my basque waistline for the skirt. Okay, now I'm going to place my tape on the underbust of my upper part and then locate the true waistline. Now after locating the true waistline, I'm going to check what I have left, which is 5 inches. Now from the waistline of my skirts, I'll be going down by 3 inches because I want to create a basque waistline on these skirts. But first of all, let me show you what you should know. Okay, the side seam allowance of the upper part and the down part should be matching up. You can see that the side seam of the skirts and the blouse is matching up. So now after that, I'm going to continue. So I went down by 3 inches and then I would connect it to my side seam. Now you have to note that the basque waistline is being cut out on just the front part. Okay, so what I did is to place my skirts on folds, and from the center fold I went down by these 3 inches, then connected the basque waist to the side seam allowance, and then went ahead to cut it out. Now if you notice, the zipper allowance for the back, which is the back, is actually on its own. I didn't touch the back. Okay, so after doing that, you can see I opened it up. The back is still intact and the only place that I have the basque waist is the front. Now after that, I'm equally going to place my lining just like that and then cut out the basque waist for the lining. Now I'm doing this on the flat table because my client is not readily available and I don't have a body form. Okay, now if your client is available, please, it is better to do this on her. When she comes for fitting, after wearing the top, she will wear the skirt part. That time you must have finished sewing the skirts, you understand, and then you just cut out the basque waistline. Now I am done cutting it out and you can see that my skirt is going to be inseam finishing. So what I did was to place my skirts, okay, right side facing each other. Remember, I've fixed in the zipper, so I'm going to go ahead and sew the waistline of the skirts. After sewing it, I went ahead to top stitch. Okay, and then this is what I have. You can see how neat this is looking. You guys, it is very, very simple. This is so cute. So what I will do now is go ahead and sew these skirts on the waistline, okay, that I've just marked out. So I'm going to open it up and match up the front waistline with the front of the upper part, and equally match up the back waistline with the back of the upper part. After doing that, I'll bring in my thread so that I'll show you how to tack this. So guys, here is my thread. This is called an invisible thread. Okay, and that is what I'm going to be using. If you want, you can use a matching thread to do this, or if you want, you can equally go ahead and stitch this on your sewing machine, but this is what I'm going to be using. You can see I've threaded it. I'm now going to knot it. I'm going to knot twice, and you guys, this invisible thread feels like a rubber. Okay, you know how rubber thread feels, the rubber thread for making of hair, that is how it feels, just that this one is so tiny. It's so tiny that after stitching with this, you won't be able to notice it, even though it is white in color. We also have the black one. Okay, now I'm going to bring in my skirt. You can equally see that I've marked out the basque waist. Okay, you can see. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and bring in my skirt. Now let me mark out the back waistline so that you guys can see it clearly. You can see the way the line goes into the back waistline. Now I'm going to bring in my skirt. First of all, I'm going to align the side seam allowance. So here is my side seam allowance of the skirts. I will align it to the blouse, and this is equally the back. Okay, so you can see that the back matches up with the back of the blouse. Now I'm going to follow the basque waistline, and then I would also match up the other side seam of the skirts. You can see how it matches up following the basque waistline and then to the other back part. Okay, so this is what I will do off camera. Remember, this also applies if you want to stitch it up on your sewing machine. So guys, I am done with this, and this is what we have. This is what the back looks like. You can see that this inbuilt corset is so beautiful. Let me go ahead and zip it up. So this is what we have. Let me equally zip the skirts. This is so beautiful, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And here is what the front looks like. Now, after all this, we are done. Now it is time for you to embellish it anyhow you want it. For me, I embellish by cutting out some pieces of the lace, stacked it on one side of the cup, and then equally place some applique on the yoke, okay, to cover up the chest line. So guys, here is the end of this tutorial. If you find it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.